Hello, folks, and welcome to Kitchen Garden Podcast number 97. I'm here with the KG team in our virtual sheds again, still locked away. Here with Emma and Tony. But we thought we'd have a chat today, didn't we, about starting a plot, because it's March and it's time to get busy out there. And I know there's an awful lot of people with lockdown who've decided to grow veg for the first time, might be wondering how to get started. And it just so happens that Emma has written an excellent feature in the March edition, which I can crib from. So now I know how to start a new plot as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we could. I mean, we could start mentioning how you'd start from a lawn, really, because I suppose a lot of people, if they're starting from scratch in their garden, there's a lot of people might have mainly lawn, mainly grass down. So you think, right, I want to dig a bit up and put some veg in it. Grow some veg. So how do you go about it? Well, I mean, if you've never grown veg before, you probably only want to start with a fairly small area. You don't want to dig up your whole lawn. I think it's always a good idea to start small and then gradually increase the area so you can see what you can manage and just play around with a small bit first. But I mean, if it's only a small area, you could literally get a spade and cut the turf into sections, and then you put the spade underneath the turf. It's only just a few centimetres. You can usually feel the resistance, can't you, on turf when you're trying to lift it. You get to that point when it's just below the roots, and then you can lift it, and then you've got a bare area to actually start digging over with a fork or your spade, and creating a veg patch that way.
Yeah, you don't have to throw away the turf, do you? You can make use of it, make loam, so you can make some of your own potting compost or top up raised beds with it later on.
Yeah, just pile it up in a corner somewhere and it'll break down and then you can use the soil again. But I mean, most people, when they've dug up a bit of lawn, quite often find that the soil is pretty good underneath. It might be a bit compacted because people walking on it, but generally the actual fertility of the soil is often quite good because the grass has kind of been almost kind of feeding it, dying back, being incorporated by the worms. So it's often pretty good. So it's worth trying that first year. You don't even probably need to actually apply anything unless it's a very, very poor clay soil or very sandy soil. Then you might want to incorporate some garden compost or some farmyard manure or something if you can get hold of it. But generally, the first year on grass that you've taken off, on soil that you've taken grass off, is pretty good. The one thing sometimes you do have to watch for, it's some sort of wireworms, isn't it? That sometimes you can get in a soil that's had grass.
You can turn it into a little raised bed as well, can't you? Just need some bit of timber, 6 inches high. It gives it a nice finish, actually, if you just put that round it. And you start, whatever the soil's like, you can still put some organic matter in, well-rotted manure or, your own compost that you've made. And it's quite a rich bed then.
The thing is about, as well, making a raised bed is, like you're saying, about 6 inches. Because some people sort of think, unless you've got mobility issues and you want a really high bed, you don't actually need a really, really high raised bed, do you? It's just kind of making the sides neat, and then you don't even have to. In the first year, you didn't even need to add anything. You can just dig it over, loosen the soil. But then the following year, because you've got a bit of sides to it, you can just pile a load of stuff in. Yeah. And it's not going to
let it rot over winter.
Let it rot over winter, and you're still keeping it. You're adding to it, but you're still keeping it a small bed. So trouble is with big raised beds, you can start off and then you think, hang on, I've got nothing to fill it with.
What do I fill it with?
It's
you can't fill it with compost.
Edging. Yeah.
That'll cost a fortune.
It'll
dry out quickly.
The only lazy way of doing it as well is put down some cardboard, isn't it? If you don't fancy cutting the turf off and you've got a little bit more time, you can just open a cardboard box, put that on the ground, and then cover that in some garden soil, or perhaps start off with a bit of potting compost from a bag if you have to, although it's an expensive way of doing it. But that will kill the grass underneath, won't it? So it's an alternative to digging the grass up if you don't want to.
I think if you've got if you're thinking of a bigger plot, especially on grass, you need to get something, rather than turn it, and maybe you should start September, October, November. I know this is March, but if you started in September, October, November, you could put some black plastic sheeting down, or some weed suppressant membrane, put loads of bricks on it, keep it down, and then let time do its work for you. And come spring, a lot of stuff will be killed off.
I suppose what you could do if you're starting now, sort of in sort of March, April, and you're like really desperate to get going. I suppose what you could do is you could dig a little bit, couldn't you? Just remove a bit of turf, maybe just for your row of potatoes, your early potatoes, and then what you could do is the rest of it, whatever size you want, the plot, you could then put the membrane down. And then gradually, as you've got a little bit more time, or you've got, say you've got some beans in June you want to plant, you roll it back. You may still have to dig a little bit up, but you then plant all the time. You've got a lot of it covered, so that eventually, gradually, very slowly, you're folding this back, but you're adding crops as you go, so you can actually get away with it straight away. But I mean, obviously, it takes more work for that little bit you're doing, but it's a way of starting like now, if you want it, rather than just sort of say, I've got to cover it all and leave it for a year. Of course you don't have to.
Yeah. It's always good advice for people taking on an allotment as well, isn't it? I think not to. Allotments can be a big area. They're really daunting. Quite often when you take them on, they're not in the best condition, are they? They're sort of weedy and
overgrown.
What else? You don't always get a lot of help in clearing it before you take it on, and that's a good method for that sort of area as well, isn't it? Just to garden a little bit of it, cover the rest, and gradually uncover it and grow more and more as the weeds get killed off. A bit less daunting then. So I think probably the thing that makes most people give up allotments anyway is just the fact they can't keep up with the weeds, and they get a bit freaked out by all the weeds and the sheer amount of space they think they've got to fill all in one go, and you just haven't. You can do it gradually. What about double digging? You know what? I don't think I've ever double dug anything in my life.
I did have a go once. Well, look, because of that, the double digging is kind of like, because it's about really getting deep, isn't it? It's getting deep down and get it. And I always think if you're going to do it, it's the sort of thing that if you're preparing a plot, you do it once, you never do it again. But I mean,
so it's one spade down and then one spade length down again. That's right, isn't it?
Well, not every soil can take that, to be fair, but
it depends, doesn't it? Yeah. Good.
I mean, I did it once, and I was just wanting to incorporate a lot of really good manure and muck and stuff. Yeah. And I dug down and I dug down again and made a trench, and then I put the compost and the manure in the bottom, and then I went and threw soil back in over the top, and then I worked my way back, so digging back. But it was hard work, and I. I think if you've got a really, really poor soil and you've got the energy and you've got the material to do it, it's worth doing once, just get your soil going, and then a year after that, it's a case of putting stuff on the top, just letting the worms do a lot of the work for you, really.
Some soils as well, they can have a bit of a hard layer in them, can't they, under the surface?
Yeah.
Quite often where people have used a rotavator for years, year after year, going the same level with the rotavator blades, and you need to double dig to sort of break that up and get the drainage going again, don't you?
That's right.
Quite a famous garden once, which will remain nameless, and they had a new head gardener, and they'd made him. He'd made his gardening team double dig the whole walled garden in his first year. Didn't go down very well, and he was going to do that every year. I noticed that after about 2 years he'd gone and they had a new head gardener, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
Do you think he was buried under the double digging? They perhaps eventually.
I think you're right. You do it once and then forget it.
It's a bit of an old technique, isn't it? That that's not really done very often, I don't think now. I mean, the latest thing is the no dig. I mean, you know, you can't get better than that, can you?
No, you can't.
I mean, that basically is you're tending an area of ground where you're not walking on it, you're not compacting it, and you're not. The point of no dig is you're kind of. The thing is with digging is it, in theory, damages the structure of the soil and damages the natural biology of the soil, whereas no dig allows all the natural flora and fauna to just naturally work and keep it in good health. And as long as you're not walking on it, theory, you keep putting more, and each year you keep putting on more organic matter like manure or garden compost, keep putting that on top and letting the worms work it through, you create a really, really healthy soil. And again, making them to start with is that basically you're creating an area. You say, right, I'm not going to walk on that. So you've got to create fairly narrow beds so you can reach from both sides. And you can create them using Charles Dowding technique. His no dig technique obviously is using something like cardboard on, like you were saying, Steve, and then piling on compost on top of that to prepare the area, and then work on from that. And then each year keep putting more stuff on top.
Keeps all the channels open, doesn't it, where the worms are working the soil. It's much kinder to them as well, because I must admit I hate taking the turf off, because you leave a lot of half worms in the soil and you're chopping, and it's awful, really, isn't it? So I mean, at least that way it keeps everything intact and all the channels in the soil, so the air can get down and the water can drain away. And it's a good technique, isn't it? I think he also uses it on the paths as well, doesn't he? Cardboard to make paths between the beds. Don't necessarily have to have, as we were saying before, you don't necessarily have to have sides to the beds, do you? You can put cardboard down to make a path and keep topping that up as it rots, or putting down wood chip, something like that, to keep a nice path. And then as you're building up your layers of compost on your no dig bed, it gets higher and higher, so you end up with sort of hump, which is enough really for growing you don't need size necessarily. No, it certainly saves you on money and work, and then putting in sides and creating kind of like edges to them, really, doesn't it? I mean, the only thing with it is you do need quite a lot of, because you're putting new material on every year. That's the idea, is you probably do need quite a bit of garden compost, so you need to kind of be quite good at making your own garden compost. And and you probably might need, if on a really big area, you probably need to get sort of almost buy-in material, sort of mushroom compost or horse manure, or some animal manure maybe. That's right, you need a stables nearby, don't you?
That's on a really big area. I suppose on a small area you'd be right with your own garden compost, wouldn't you? Of course. You would. I've started one this year, and I must admit I didn't have anything to put on the cardboard, so I did start with a few bags of potting compost, but I'm since topping it up with soil from elsewhere in the garden, and had some work done in the garden, and that created a bit of soil I didn't know what to do with, so that went on as well. And it doesn't take very long before the cardboard rots and the grass underneath disappears. And you can, I mean, even within the first season, you can dig through it and plant plug plants, plants, perhaps beans and things that you've raised in pots. You can get away with that. That's the thing, isn't it, with the first season? The first season you've got, it's still quite a lot of weed or grass underneath, and you're still dying off, and you've got fresh stuff on it. So actually sowing seeds in that is not really going to work. So you're going to have to, you can plant your seed potatoes, that would probably work. And as you say, you're better off growing things in little cell trays and pots, and then planting out young plants, which will cope with that better.
Yeah, potatoes are a good crop to start with, aren't they? With any new bed, really. Because I think it's mainly because you have to move the soil around so much with potatoes, don't you? You've got to dig quite a big trench and put them in, and then you need to earth them up, and all that is moving the soil and killing any weeds that might be in your new bed, so that once you've harvested and start growing other things, there's less of a problem.
The only other thing, just to quickly mention, I guess, is that if you haven't really got an area in your garden, you can always grow a few things in pots. And we've got a good feature coming up soon, haven't we, on growing in pots that you've done, Steve?
No, a feature anyway. Yes.
No, it's very good. So, that's something people can do if they haven't really got the area, to grow in. So, in
fact, we've also got a good video from Emma on there. Since you mentioned my feature, I'll mention your video, Emma, on YouTube, making a bucket garden.
Oh, a bucket garden. You're growing veg in buckets. You can grow everything in buckets.
Love that.
They're really cheap. Yeah. They're the perfect size. A bucket is a perfect size for your veg growing.
Yeah, 2 gallon
stick
bucket.
A few holes in the bottom.
Make sure you got holes in the bottom, some compost or garden soil in there, and off you go. Yeah, everybody can grow something to eat, even if you've just got a balcony.
Yeah, a few tomatoes in a growing bag even. That's all you need to get you started. It's probably better than rushing out trying to get an allotment straight away, isn't it? Just do a little plot or a few pots, see how you enjoy it, and then move on from there. Anyway, that's probably plenty for people to be doing. If they're not out digging the plot, they've got plenty to sow to fill it up. So I suppose we better get back to it, haven't we? Get back and do some work.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've got any questions for us, don't forget to save them up and email them in. You can email me at sot@mortons, which is mortons.co.uk, and we'll save them up and try and answer them for you on our next podcast. Otherwise, we've also got some great subscription offers. If you go to www.classicmagazines.co.uk, you can take out a subscription, and that way you don't have to don a mask and get out to the shops. It will just drop through your letterbox every month. And also you'll get some free seeds, which can't be bad. So thanks again for listening, and bye to the team.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this video, press the like button, and also give us a comment. Let us know what you're doing in the garden at the moment. And if you like our videos generally, it'd be really great if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel.